Get out of here! The CEO's voice thundered, cutting through the solemn silence of the church. The air was thick with grief as the mourners, still gathered in their black attire, turned in shock toward the altar. Sofia's father, the CEO, stood in the center of the church, eyes blazing with fury as he pointed toward Jaden, the son of the family's maid, who had dared to come to the funeral of his wife. The guests gasped, whispers spreading like wildfire through the pews. "You are nothing but a servant," the CEO spat, his words echoing in the hallowed space. "You and your son do not belong here. Leave now." Jaden stood frozen, his face pale, his fists clenched at his sides. Beside him, his mother fell to her knees, desperate, pleading with Sofia's father. "Please don't do this. We meant no harm," she sobbed, her voice breaking with the weight of the moment. But then, as the tension reached its peak, a calm but powerful voice cut through the chaos. "That's enough." Sofia's grandmother, the matriarch of the family, stepped forward from the back of the church, her eyes locked on her son. The room fell into an uneasy hush as she walked toward the altar, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. The CEO's glare faltered, but she didn't back down. "You may have built this empire, but I will not allow you to tear apart this family's heart." The guests were paralyzed, unsure if they were witnessing an act of defiance or a tragic collapse. Would Sofia's grandmother truly stand against her own son at the funeral of his wife? Could she really support her granddaughter's forbidden love in front of everyone? Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The church had been filled with sorrow, the soft murmurs of the guests barely audible over the low hum of the organ playing a mournful hymn. Yet amidst the silence, Sofia stood near the back, her heart a storm of confusion and fear. The man she loved, Jaden, stood before her father, her powerful, unyielding father, who had just humiliated him in front of everyone. The soft glow of the stained glass windows painted the church in shades of red and blue, but it did nothing to soften the crushing weight that pressed on Sofia's chest. She had never seen her father this furious. Never. Her father, Liam Stanton, was a force. Known for his ruthless business tactics, his unshakable control, and the reputation he had built as a man who did not tolerate weakness. To be the CEO of Stanton Enterprises was to command the world, and he expected nothing less from everyone around him. Sofia's mind raced back to the first time she met Jaden. He had been no more than a shy boy, the son of the family maid, helping his mother with chores around the house. It was nothing more than a casual glance at first, a fleeting moment as she watched him work, but something about his presence sparked a curiosity. He wasn't like the other boys her father allowed her to be around. He had humility, a quiet strength, and a warmth that made her feel something unexpected, seen. But despite their differences, despite everything her father had built, everything the world expected from them, they had found each other. She hadn't meant to fall in love with Jaden, but over time, it happened. Slowly at first, with stolen glances and soft conversations in secret corners of the mansion, but then it became undeniable. Sofia had fallen for him completely. His kindness, his intelligence, the way he made her feel alive in a world where she often felt like a prisoner of expectation. However, that love had come at a price. Sofia's father had always known. For weeks, she had seen the disapproval in his eyes whenever Jaden was around. But she had hoped that he would change, that he would accept their love. She had tried to reason with him, to explain that love had no boundaries, no class or color or position. But all she'd received in return were cold, dismissive words. "He is beneath you," her father had told her time and time again. The fight at the funeral was just the beginning of what Sofia had feared. Her father would never allow their love. And yet she couldn't let go of Jaden, not now, not ever. Her heart rebelled against her father's control, against the life he had mapped out for her, and against the walls he had built between her and the man who had captured her heart. But as she turned to her grandmother, who had just made her bold declaration of defiance, Sofia's mind raced. What was her grandmother planning? Was she really going to protect their love? Or was this another empty promise, one that would ultimately leave Sofia more alone than ever before? Sofia stepped toward her grandmother, her feet heavy as she walked against the sea of mourners who had watched the scene unfold. The whispers had already started. The rumors would spread. The Stanton name was now tied to this scandal, her father's rage, her grandmother's defiance, and her own broken heart. Her grandmother, Vivian Stanton, was a woman of quiet power, a legacy in her own right. She had seen it all, the rise and fall of empires, the betrayals, the heartache, the triumphs. Vivian had never once shown weakness, never once faltered under pressure. But today, in the face of her son's anger and the family's expectations, she was offering something none of them could have predicted: hope. Sofia stepped closer to her grandmother, her voice barely a whisper. "Grandmother, what are you doing? You can't." Vivian raised a hand, her expression one of unspoken understanding. "I am doing what your father never would, Sofia. I am doing what needs to be done for you." But, Sofia started to protest, but her grandmother cut her off. "I know it's hard to understand, but trust me." The words hung in the air, weighty and full of promise, but Sofia wasn't sure she could trust anyone, not after what had just happened. She had always admired her grandmother, respected her for the strength and composure she exuded, but this was something else entirely. What had her grandmother meant by those words? What was she willing to risk to protect Sofia's love? In that moment, Sofia realized that her world was about to change. But she wasn't sure whether it was for better or for worse. The funeral had come to an abrupt end. The mourners, unsettled by the scene that had unfolded in the church, made their hasty exits, their hushed voices barely concealing the gossip that would surely spread like wildfire. Sofia couldn't focus on their whispers, nor could she understand the sympathy in their eyes. All she could feel was the burn of her father's betrayal, the cold weight of his rejection. She stood beside her grandmother as the last few people trickled out of the church. Vivian said nothing, but there was a calm resolve in her posture, a quiet strength that Sofia couldn't quite comprehend. Her father, on the other hand, was nowhere to be found. He had stormed off the moment the guests left, disappearing behind the walls of their home with all the fury of a man who believed his power was absolute. But Sofia wasn't ready to just let this go. Not now. Not when everything she had ever wanted was slipping away. "Grandmother," Sofia said, her voice trembling with emotion, "you have to tell me what's going on. What are you planning? What can we possibly do against my father's will?" Vivian's gaze softened as she looked at her granddaughter. She took a deep breath, as if gathering her thoughts before speaking. "I know you think this is impossible, Sofia. But there is always a way." Sofia's heart raced. She had heard these kinds of words before, hopeful promises from her grandmother. But this time, it felt different. More real. And for the first time since the confrontation, Sofia allowed herself to hope. "You've lived through more than I can imagine. But this is different. Jaden is..." Sofia's voice cracked, and she had to swallow the lump in her throat. "He's the only person who has ever made me feel alive." Vivian's expression shifted, her features softening as she placed a gentle hand on Sofia's shoulder. "I understand, darling. But we are not fighting for a simple love story. We're fighting against everything your father has built." Sofia blinked, her stomach sinking as the full weight of Vivian's words sank in. The Stanton name was not just a family legacy, it was an empire. A ruthless empire built on control, power, and the very idea that nothing could stand in the way of the Stantons' will. And that's why you have to fight, Sofia. The hardest battles are always the ones that matter the most. Vivian's voice was steady, her eyes locking with her granddaughter's in a way that made Sofia feel like she could move mountains. Sofia nodded, but a nagging doubt still clung to her. "But how, grandmother? How do we go against my father? He'll destroy Jaden. He'll destroy everything." Vivian smiled gently, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Your father may be a CEO, but I am the one who holds the true power in this family. And I will not let him tear apart the only thing worth fighting for." Just as Sofia was about to speak, a sudden crash echoed through the hallway. The door to the church flew open, and the figure of Jaden stepped into the doorway, his eyes wild, his face flushed with desperation. Sofia's breath caught in her throat as she locked eyes with him. He had come. Against all odds, he had come. Sofia, Jaden's voice was hoarse, barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of everything he had risked to be here. I had to see you. I couldn't leave things like this. Sofia's heart swelled, and in that moment, nothing else in the world mattered. Not her father's rage, not the expectations of the guests, not the looming shadow of her family's power. All that mattered was the man standing before her, the man who had stolen her heart and would never let it go. But before she could speak, her grandmother moved toward Jaden with a surprising calmness. She placed a hand on his arm, her gaze steady. You are not leaving, Jaden. Not until we fix this. Sofia's head spun. Fix it? What can we possibly do? Vivian turned to her, her eyes now fierce with a fire that Sofia had never seen in her before. We'll make your father see reason, Sofia. And if he refuses, we'll take a stand together. For your love. For this family. Do you think Sofia and Jaden can really fight back against her powerful father? What will happen next in this dangerous game of family loyalty? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to know what you think will happen. The church doors closed with a quiet thud, sealing them inside, a sanctuary of whispers and unresolved tension. Jaden stood in front of Sofia, his hands trembling, his eyes full of both hope and fear. He had risked everything to be here, knowing that it might be the last time he could see her. The memory of her father's wrath burned in his mind, but all that mattered now was her. Sofia, he whispered again, stepping closer, as if afraid that if he didn't, she might slip away from him forever. I don't care about the consequences. I love you. I always will. But I can't lose you. Sofia's heart pounded in her chest as she took a step toward him. The weight of everything she had learned today, the confrontation, the betrayal, her grandmother's strange promises, pressed down on her, yet in this moment, none of it seemed to matter. Jaden. Her voice trembled, and she reached out to touch his arm, as though grounding herself in the only truth she had left. We're fighting something much bigger than us. Her words lingered between them, and for a moment, all they could do was look at each other. But the quiet didn't last long. From the corner of the church, Vivian's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. Sofia, Jaden. We don't have much time. Your father is already planning his next move. And you need to understand something crucial. Sofia turned to her grandmother, her heart sinking at the weight of her words. Vivian was no longer the calm, collected woman Sofia had always known. There was something darker in her gaze now, something hidden beneath the surface. What do you mean? Sofia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Vivian took a step forward, lowering her voice so only they could hear. Your father's business dealings, they're more than just about power. There are people he answers to, people who are as ruthless as he is. If he sees that you and Jaden together could bring scandal to the family, there are forces far beyond him that will crush both of you without hesitation. Jaden's face paled as the gravity of her words settled in. What are you saying? He asked, his voice low and urgent. Are you telling us that your son, Sofia's father, is involved in something criminal? Vivian's expression darkened, and she hesitated, as though weighing how much to reveal. Your father isn't just any CEO, Jaden. He's made deals, dirty ones. And there are people in the shadows who will do anything to protect those deals. He's not the only one who holds power here. And if he's determined to destroy you, he has the means to do it. Sofia could barely breathe as she tried to absorb what her grandmother was saying. She had always known her father had secrets. She had grown up in the glimmering world of wealth, where everything seemed pristine on the outside but could easily crumble. But this was something else entirely. So what do we do? She asked, her voice shaky. How do we fight against something so much bigger than us? Vivian's gaze hardened. We fight back by exposing the truth. Your father may be untouchable in the eyes of the law, but he has enemies too. People who have reason to bring him down. And we will use that to our advantage. Jaden shook his head, disbelief clouding his features. But how? We're just two people. What can we possibly do? Vivian's lips curled into a faint smile, the first hint of something like hope in her eyes. You may be just two people, Jaden, but you're not alone. I've been preparing for this moment my entire life. If I have to go up against my own son to protect you both, I will. The weight of her words hit Sofia like a wave. You mean, you've been planning this all along? Vivian's eyes softened slightly, as though she were finally ready to share the full depth of her intentions. I've spent years watching your father's empire grow, and I've seen what it's done to him. To all of us. He thinks he controls everything. But he doesn't control love. And he doesn't control the truth. Sofia's mind spun as she tried to process everything. The revelation about her father's dealings, the danger that loomed over them, none of it seemed real. But as she looked at Jaden, standing before her, his face full of determination, a spark of hope flickered in her chest. "We can do this," she said, her voice gaining strength. "We can't let him destroy everything we have." Vivian's eyes gleamed with approval. But we need to be careful. If your father finds out what we're planning, he'll retaliate in ways you can't even imagine. Sofia turned back to Jaden, her heart in her throat. She didn't know how this was going to end. She didn't even know if they could win. But one thing was clear. They were about to fight a battle that would change everything. "What are we going to do first?" Jaden asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Vivian's smile was sharp and full of resolve. "We begin by finding the people who can help us. There are those who want your father's empire to crumble. And we will make sure they know who's ready to take it down." "Do you think Sofia, Jaden, and Vivian can really expose her father's secrets and take down the empire he's built? What would you do if you were in Sofia's shoes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below." The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale light over the mansion as Sofia, Jaden, and Vivian huddled in a secluded study, far from prying eyes. The weight of the plan they just outlined sat heavily on their shoulders. Every word, every movement, felt as though it could shatter the fragile thread of hope they were clinging to. Vivian had been a tower of strength since they had begun formulating their plan, but even she seemed more tense than usual tonight. Sofia could see it, the flicker of something deep in her grandmother's eyes. Something was wrong. "Grandmother," Sofia asked, her voice tentative, "are you sure this is the right path? Do you really think we can expose him without destroying ourselves in the process?" Vivian, who had seemed so unshakable before, took a long breath, her gaze turning distant. "There are things I've never told you, Sofia. Things you won't understand until you see them for yourself." Jaden stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean, Vivian? What else is there?" Vivian's lips tightened, her eyes shifting between Sofia and Jaden, as if calculating how much to reveal. "Your father, Sofia," she began, her voice dropping to a low whisper. "He's not just a businessman. He's part of a much darker world, an underground network of corrupt officials, criminals, and people who will stop at nothing to protect their interests." Sofia's breath caught in her throat. "What are you saying? Are you saying my father's been involved in criminal activity all along?" Vivian nodded slowly, her eyes full of regret. "Yes, and more. You see, when I married your grandfather, I was naive. I thought I knew who I was marrying. But soon, I learned things I wish I hadn't. He was always involved in business deals, in things far beyond the law. But it wasn't until after he died that I truly understood the depths of the network your father has built." Sofia stepped back, her mind reeling. "I never knew, all these years, he's kept it hidden from me." Jaden's eyes flickered with understanding. "And now you think he'll go after us if we try to expose him?" Vivian's expression hardened. "No, I don't think he'll go after you. He will. You are a threat to everything he's worked for. And he will do whatever it takes to destroy you both." Sofia's heart pounded in her chest. For the first time, the plan to expose her father didn't feel like a courageous rebellion. It felt like a death sentence. "Then how do we win, Grandma? If he's this dangerous, how do we fight him?" Vivian's gaze sharpened. "We need to get to the people who can bring him down. There are more powerful forces in the world than your father. But we have to be very careful. Someone close to him is feeding him information. A mole." Sofia's pulse quickened. "A mole? Someone we know." Vivian nodded. Yes, and that's where the twist comes in. We've been playing a dangerous game, believing your father was the only one we had to worry about. But there's someone else, someone you wouldn't expect. Sofia and Jaden exchanged a look. Who? Jaden asked, his voice thick with tension. Vivian hesitated, before answering with a gravely serious expression. Your father's biggest ally is not just a business partner. It's someone in your family. Sofia felt as though the room had tilted beneath her feet. What do you mean? Who? Vivian slowly turned her eyes toward the door of the study, where a shadow loomed, a figure that had been standing there for some time, listening. The door creaked open, and in stepped Sofia's own father's younger brother, her uncle, Victor Stanton. It's me, Victor said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I've been feeding your father information. For years. Sofia's breath caught in her throat as the weight of his words crashed down on her. Uncle Victor? You've been helping him all along? Victor nodded slowly, his face a mask of both guilt and determination. I didn't want to, Sofia. But your father promised me power, control over parts of the empire he refused to give me. I had no choice. He's too dangerous. Jaden stepped forward, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. So you were the one pulling the strings behind the scenes? You're the one who made this all happen? Victor's eyes flickered with shame. I didn't have a choice. If I didn't cooperate, I would have been erased. His eyes shifted to Vivian, who had been silent throughout the exchange. And I know you've known all along, Mother. You never told her, did you? Vivian remained still, her expression unreadable. It was never the right time, she said softly. But now you know the truth. And now we all have to choose where we stand. Sofia's mind spun, the revelation a gut punch. Her own uncle, the person she had always trusted, always looked to for guidance, was the one who had been feeding her father the information to keep control over the family. He had been complicit in everything that had torn her world apart. So what now? Sofia's voice was barely a whisper, her heart racing in her chest. Victor took a deep breath and stepped closer, his voice heavy with regret. I'm done. Your father's greed is going to destroy us all if we don't stop him. Vivian's eyes locked with his, the faintest flicker of something like relief in her expression. Then you'll help us. Victor nodded. I'll do whatever it takes to help you take him down. But we need to move quickly. There's no time to waste. And we have to be careful who we trust now. Sofia felt the ground beneath her feet shift again, but this time, there was no turning back. The game had changed. Her family was divided. Her father's empire was crumbling, and the people who had been her greatest allies were now the ones who would help her destroy him. But she couldn't shake the question that haunted her. Who else had been watching? Now that Sofia knows her own uncle is involved, will this shift the tide in their fight? Can they really trust him after everything? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie light over the mansion's expansive grounds. A cool breeze whispered through the tall trees outside, their branches swaying in time with the weight of the decisions that lingered inside. Sofia stood in the center of the study, surrounded by the cold marble floors and towering bookshelves. Her fingers lightly grazed the edge of the desk, but her mind was far away, spinning with the web of secrets and lies that had just been revealed. Jaden stood beside her, silent, his face tense. He had come to her, full of hope, believing they could fight for their love. And yet now, in this quiet room, the stakes had grown immeasurably higher. Vivian, the family matriarch, had become an unexpected ally, a pillar of strength that Sofia could lean on, but even she had admitted that things were far darker than either of them had imagined. The secrets that had been hidden in their family for years were more than just shady business deals. This wasn't just a story of forbidden love. This was a fight for survival. Sofia had been raised in the lap of luxury, surrounded by opulence and privilege. The Stanton name was synonymous with power, and she had grown accustomed to a world where the rules didn't apply to her family. But now, standing in this room, she was beginning to understand the true cost of that power. Grandmother, Sofia finally broke the silence, her voice filled with uncertainty. Are you sure this is the right path? Can we really bring him down? Vivian turned to face her granddaughter, her expression a mixture of pride and concern. "There's no turning back now, Sofia," she said quietly, her eyes narrowing as she glanced at the grand clock on the wall. The ticking sound that followed felt like a countdown, one that marked the narrowing window of opportunity. "Your father has made enemies, Sofia. He's not just a businessman. He's a criminal. And if we're going to fight for what's right, we need to understand the full scale of the war we're about to enter." Sofia's heart pounded in her chest as she absorbed her grandmother's words. She had always suspected that there was more to her father's business dealings than he had let on, but this was a revelation that shook her to the core. Her father had never been a man of warmth or compassion, but to think he was involved in a world of criminals, illicit deals, and shadowy alliances, it was beyond anything she could have imagined. "We need to move carefully," Vivian continued, her voice low and measured. "If your father discovers what we're planning, he won't hesitate to destroy us. But we can't back down now, not when the truth is finally within reach." Jaden stepped forward, his brows furrowed, eyes filled with resolve. "What truth, Vivian? What are you saying? That your son, Sofia's father, is part of something worse than we thought? We've been fighting him this whole time, but now we know he's far more dangerous than we realized." Vivian's expression darkened, and she crossed the room to the large window overlooking the estate's sprawling gardens. The moonlight reflected off her face, casting deep shadows beneath her eyes. She didn't speak immediately, as though considering how much to reveal. When she did, her voice was barely above a whisper. "There are people your father answers to, Jaden. People who control much more than just his business. He's become entangled in a web of corruption, with ties to officials, organized crime, and illegal networks that fund his empire. And now he's entangled us all." Sofia's throat tightened as the weight of her grandmother's revelation settled in. Her father, the man who had raised her in luxury, who had been the epitome of control and dominance, was not just a powerful businessman, he was a puppet master in a much darker game. "I didn't want you to know this, Sofia." Vivian's voice was tinged with regret, her eyes not meeting her granddaughter's. "But now you must. Your father's empire is built on greed and deceit. And if we're going to save ourselves, we have to expose the truth. We have to take him down from the inside." Sofia's mind was racing, her thoughts colliding. She had never imagined her father was capable of such things. How could the man she had trusted, her protector, her guide, be responsible for so much destruction? And how could she possibly fight against such power? Her gaze flickered toward Jaden, and she saw the same questions reflected in his eyes. They had come this far together, but now the stakes had been raised to a level neither of them had prepared for. "But how do we fight him?" Jaden's voice cracked, his frustration evident. "How do we stop a man who has built this empire and has everyone in his pocket?" Vivian didn't hesitate. "We find the cracks in his empire, the people who want him to fall. There are others who want him taken down, Jaden. We'll make them our allies. And then we'll use what we know to expose everything. His dirty deals, his lies, his connections." The tension in the room grew thick, the silence pressing in on them. Sofia's thoughts were a whirlwind. She had spent her life trying to live up to her father's expectations, trying to please him, to be the perfect daughter. And now, she was being asked to tear down everything he had built. "I'm scared," Sofia admitted, her voice small and vulnerable. "What if we fail? What if everything we try only makes it worse? What if he destroys us instead?" Vivian's eyes softened, and she placed a gentle hand on Sofia's shoulder. "Fear is natural, darling. But sometimes, the only way to find peace is to face the darkness head-on. We're not doing this alone. We have each other. And we have the truth on our side. That's more than enough." Sofia nodded, the weight of her grandmother's words sinking in. She had always admired Vivian for her strength, for her unshakable resolve. But now, Sofia was beginning to understand what it truly meant to fight for what mattered. The stakes had never been higher, and she couldn't afford to falter. Suddenly, the door to the study creaked open, interrupting the moment of resolve. Sofia's heart skipped a beat, her pulse quickening as the figure that stepped inside sent a chill through the room. It was her uncle, Victor Stanton, her father's younger brother. He looked disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, his face strained with exhaustion. He had always been a man of few words, but his presence now felt heavy with unspoken tension. He closed the door behind him, his gaze flickering to Vivian before turning to Sofia and Jaden. "I'm in," Victor said, his voice steady despite the chaos that seemed to surround him. "I know what I've done. I've been complicit in all of this. But I can't let your father ruin everything." Sofia's heart skipped a beat. She had never imagined her uncle would come to them for help. He had always been a loyal ally to her father, a silent partner in his empire. But now, as the family's dark secrets came to light, Victor was the last person she would have expected to ally with them. "You've been helping him all along?" Sofia's voice cracked as the betrayal sank in. "You've been feeding him information? The things he's done, did you know?" Victor's face flushed with guilt, and for a moment he looked as though he might turn and walk away. But instead he met Sofia's gaze. "I never wanted to hurt you, Sofia. But your father's power was overwhelming. I thought if I played along, I could gain control. But now, I see that he's willing to burn everything to keep it." Jaden stepped forward, his expression hard. "You think you can just walk in here and help us after everything you've done? You've been part of the machine that's been hurting us all." Victor didn't flinch. "I can't change the past, Jaden. But I can help take him down. I know the inner workings of his empire. I know who the players are, and I know where the cracks are. I can help you. But you need to trust me." Sofia's chest tightened as she processed his words. "How do we even know we can trust you?" Victor met her eyes. "Because I'm done watching your father tear everything apart. I know you don't trust me, Sofia. I wouldn't trust me either. But I have to make things right." The tension in the room was thick, and for a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly Vivian turned towards Sofia, her eyes full of resolve. "We don't have much time," she said. "But with Victor's help, we can finally put an end to this." Sofia looked between her grandmother and uncle, the weight of the decision crashing down on her. "All right," she whispered, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "Let's take him down." Do you think Sofia can trust her uncle, Victor? Can they really take down her father's empire with his help? Or will this alliance turn out to be just another betrayal? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The mansion had never felt so cold. The grand hallways, once filled with the echoes of laughter and celebration, now felt like empty corridors, lined with secrets and lies. Sofia walked through the house in a daze, her footsteps echoing against the cold marble floors. The weight of everything that had happened over the past few days, the confrontation at her mother's funeral, the betrayal by her father, the revelations from Vivian, and now, the dark twist of Uncle Victor's involvement, crushed her. She had been fighting for her love, for Jaden, for a future where they could be together, free from the constraints of her family's empire. But now, it felt like the walls were closing in. No matter what she did, no matter how hard she tried, everything was falling apart. Sofia paused at the grand staircase, her gaze drifting to the portraits of her ancestors lining the walls. The faces of powerful men and women who had built this empire stared down at her, their eyes cold and judging. What had she become? The heir to a legacy built on manipulation, deceit, and power. The truth she had uncovered about her father's criminal dealings, her uncle's betrayal, and the web of lies she had been fed all her life, felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Her mind raced, but there was no clarity. Only confusion. Only anger. How did it come to this? She whispered to herself, her voice shaky. Sofia's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. She turned, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw Jaden standing at the end of the hall, his face etched with worry. He had been quiet since the revelation of Victor's betrayal. The air between them had become thick with unspoken words, and the emotional weight of the situation had driven a wedge between them, even though they hadn't meant for it to happen. The love they had shared seemed so distant now, replaced by the cold reality of their circumstances. "Sofia," Jaden said softly, his voice rough. "We need to talk." Sofia nodded, but she didn't know what to say. There were so many questions, so many doubts, swirling in her mind. How could they trust anyone? How could they possibly fight back against her father, knowing the full extent of his power? Jaden walked toward her, but he stopped just a few feet away, as if afraid to get too close. I don't know what we're doing anymore, he admitted. We've been fighting for something that's slipping away. Your father, he has connections everywhere. Victor, he's been feeding your father information. I can't see a way out. Sofia's heart ached at his words. She knew he was right. They were cornered, trapped in a game where the rules had been set by forces much stronger than either of them. I don't know what to do either, she whispered. I feel like I'm losing everything. My family, my future. And I don't know if I can keep fighting this fight. Jaden stepped closer, reaching out to gently take her hand in his. We've been through so much together. But I need to know something, Sofia. Do you still believe in us? Sofia's breath caught in her throat. Of course she did. She loved him more than anything. But the battle they were facing was so much bigger than love. And she wasn't sure if their love could survive this war. I don't know if I can keep going, Sofia admitted, her voice breaking. It's like we're fighting a battle we can never win. I don't know if we can survive this, Jaden. I'm scared. Jaden pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if trying to shield her from the weight of the world. For a moment, they just stood there, clinging to each other, the world outside feeling so far away. But even in his arms, Sofia could feel the tension, the uncertainty. Nothing was simple anymore. I'm scared too, Jaden confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. But we can't give up. We can't let your father win. He's already taken so much from us. But we can't let him take everything. Sofia closed her eyes, her heart breaking as she felt the truth of his words sink in. They couldn't give up. But the road ahead was so dark, so uncertain. How much more could they endure before it all crumbled? They stood there for what felt like an eternity, neither of them willing to break the silence. But in that moment of stillness, Sofia's mind began to wander. She thought of her grandmother, Vivian, and the plan she had set in motion. She thought of Victor, the uncle who had betrayed her, but who now seemed to be genuinely trying to make amends. She thought of the empire her father had built, the empire that had ensnared everyone around her, including herself. She knew what she had to do. We can't give up, Sofia said finally, her voice filled with quiet determination. But we need to find another way. We can't fight him with brute force. He's too powerful. But we can expose him. We can take him down from the inside. Jaden nodded slowly, understanding what she meant. You're right, he said, his voice growing firmer. We've been playing his game, but now it's time to change the rules. Sofia squeezed his hand, her heart racing. We can't do this alone. We need Vivian. And we need Victor, if he's really on our side. We can't trust him completely, but we need to use what he knows. Jaden's expression hardened. We need to move quickly. Your father won't sit idle for long. And if he finds out we're planning something, it'll be too late. We're running out of time, Sofia whispered, the gravity of their situation crashing down on her once more. But if we fail, if we don't expose him now, we might lose everything. They exchanged a look, one filled with a shared understanding of the danger they faced. If they were going to make it through this, they would have to fight smarter, not harder. The battle was no longer just about love. It was about survival. And it would be the hardest fight of their lives. Do you think Sofia and Jaden can really turn the tide against her powerful father? Will they be able to expose the truth, or will they lose everything they've fought for? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The weight of the mansion's cold, silent halls was almost unbearable as Sofia moved through them, each step echoing like a drumbeat in her chest. The uncertainty that had plagued her for so long, about her father's empire, her own place within it, and the consequences of standing against it, was gnawing at her. But now, standing at the precipice of what would be the most important fight of her life, something had shifted inside her. Her thoughts raced as she made her way to the study, where Jaden was waiting. She had spent hours after their conversation, trying to piece together the fractured truths about her family, about her father, about the people who had been pulling strings in the shadows. But now, something had clicked. She had always known there was more to the story, more than the glamorous life her family had presented to the outside world. But the scale of what she had uncovered, her father's criminal dealings, the hidden alliances, the lies, had been too overwhelming. But no more. No more running. Sofia muttered under her breath. She had always been the dutiful daughter, the one who had played her part in the perfect family image. But that image had shattered, piece by piece, until all that was left was the raw, ugly truth. She could no longer hide from it. And neither could Jaden. As she approached the study, she found Jaden standing by the window, his back to her. He was staring out over the grounds, lost in thought. He had been quiet for the past few hours, the weight of their conversation earlier still hanging in the air between them. But Sofia could see the same determination that had always been there, behind his pain, behind his confusion. They weren't done yet. They couldn't be. Jaden. Sofia's voice broke the silence, soft yet filled with resolve. He turned, his eyes meeting hers, and for the first time in days, Sofia saw the flicker of hope in his gaze. He didn't say anything at first, he didn't have to. In his silence, she knew he was waiting for her to lead them forward. She had always been the one to hold the family together, the one who had been expected to make all the right decisions. But now, it wasn't about doing what was expected. It was about doing what was right. "We can't keep waiting for the right moment," Sofia said, her voice steady, the fear she had been holding on to starting to dissipate. "The truth is the only weapon we have left. If we expose my father's crimes, everything he's built could come crashing down. But we need to do it now, before he catches on." Jaden nodded, his jaw clenched. "But we can't just expose him. We need something bigger. Something that will make them believe us. If we don't have proof, it's just a whisper, a rumor." Sofia looked at him, a spark of realization flashing in her eyes. "What if we could get to the people who can take him down? We have to go straight to the ones who control the money, the power, the people who are pulling the strings from the shadows." Jaden stepped closer, his brows furrowing. "How do we even get access to them? Your father's people are too deep, too dangerous." Sofia took a deep breath, her fingers trembling but her resolve hardening. "I think we already know someone who can help us. Someone inside the Empire. Uncle Victor." Jaden's face twisted in disbelief, but Sofia held up a hand before he could protest. "I know what you're thinking. But listen to me. He's been feeding my father information for years, but now he's terrified of what my father is becoming. He wants out, and he knows how to bring down everything my father has built. If we work with him, we can expose my father's empire for what it really is." Jaden hesitated, his gaze flicking toward the window as if trying to make sense of it all. "Do you really trust him?" Sofia's voice wavered for a brief moment, but she quickly steadied herself. "I don't know if I can ever fully trust him. But we don't have a choice. We're running out of time, Jaden. If we don't act, we'll be buried beneath all of this. I can't lose you. I can't lose everything we've fought for." There was a long pause as Jaden took a step toward her, his eyes softening as he reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands. The touch was tender, but there was an unmistakable strength in the way he held her, a quiet promise that no matter what happened next, they would face it together. "I'm with you," Jaden said quietly. "You've always had the courage to do what's right, even when it scared you. I trust you. I trust us." The words settled into Sofia's chest like a heavy weight, but they also filled her with something else, something powerful. It was the spark of clarity she needed. They had always been fighting against the tide, trying to hold onto a love that seemed doomed from the start. But now they weren't just fighting for love. They were fighting for truth, for freedom, and for the future they both deserved. Sofia closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She could feel the weight of everything they had already lost, but she also felt the weight of everything they stood to gain. She wasn't just the heir to the Stanton Empire anymore. She was the one who would bring it to its knees. "We need to bring this to light," Sofia said firmly, her voice cutting through the doubt that had once clouded her mind. "I'm done hiding. Done playing by their rules. I'm ready to fight for what's mine. For us." Jaden nodded, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Then let's take the fight to them. Together." As they stood there, the air between them thick with purpose, a realization hit Sofia harder than anything she had felt before. It wasn't just about taking down her father. It was about reclaiming her own identity, her own future. For too long, she had been trapped by the expectations of her family. She had been taught that power was something you inherited, something you controlled. But now she knew better. Power wasn't about wealth or influence. It was about the truth. And the truth had a way of breaking even the strongest of chains. "We do this now," she said, determination flooding her veins. "We expose him for who he really is, and we fight until the end." Sofia turned, her gaze steady as she walked toward the door. There was no turning back now. "What do you think? Will Sofia and Jaden be able to trust Uncle Victor and bring down her father's empire? How far will they go to fight for their love and the truth? Let us know your thoughts in the comments." The night was thick with tension as Sofia, Jaden, and Vivian sat in the dimly lit study, their minds racing. Time was no longer on their side. Every moment they delayed, every second they spent in hesitation, brought them closer to the point of no return. They had one shot at this. One chance to bring down her father's empire before it completely consumed them. The pieces of the puzzle had finally started to fit together. Victor, her uncle, had reluctantly agreed to help them expose her father's empire. But even with his insider knowledge, the task ahead was monumental. They needed evidence, something irrefutable that could destroy everything he had built. And they needed to act fast. The longer they waited, the more danger they were in. Sofia could feel it in her bones. Her father wouldn't sit idle for long. "This is it." Vivian's voice broke through the silence, sharp and resolute. "We've gathered everything we need. The information on your father's illegal dealings, his secret accounts, the names of those who are tied to his network. It's all here. It's time to expose him." Sofia nodded, though the weight of what they were about to do pressed heavily on her chest. Exposing her father would not only ruin him, it would tear apart everything she had ever known. It would unravel the family she had once been so proud to be a part of. But she couldn't back down now. She had already lost too much. "Do you really think they'll believe us?" Jaden asked, his voice tight with both resolve and doubt. He sat across from Sofia, his hand resting on the edge of the table. "Even with the evidence, your father's influence is vast. He's connected to some of the most powerful people in the world. Will they really turn against him?" Sofia's eyes met his, and for the first time, she felt a sense of peace in the midst of the storm. "I don't know, Jaden. But we have to try. We have to give them the truth. If we don't, then everything we've fought for, everything we are, will be lost forever." Victor entered the room, his face drawn with tension. The weight of the moment hung over him too, but he was determined. His loyalty to Sofia had shifted in the past few days, and now he was fully committed to helping her take down their father. He had already given them the names of several key individuals involved in her father's illicit dealings. But even that was just a sliver of the truth. "We need to go now," Victor said, his voice low. "I've set up a meeting with one of the journalists who's been tracking your father's activities. We need to get them the proof. We need to make sure they run the story." Sofia's heart raced. This was the moment she had been dreading and anticipating all at once. There was no more room for hesitation. "Let's do it," she said firmly, standing up and reaching for Jaden's hand. "We do this now, or we risk everything." The four of them made their way to the waiting car, the heavy silence in the air broken only by the sound of the tires against the pavement. Sofia's mind was spinning as she tried to prepare herself for what was about to unfold. The truth was about to be laid bare. There was no going back from this. As they approached the meeting point, an upscale hotel tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, Sofia's chest tightened. They pulled into the underground parking garage, and Sofia's pulse quickened. The moment they stepped out of the car, she could feel the weight of her father's empire pressing down on them, even in this neutral ground. Every step they took toward the hotel felt like a step closer to the edge of a cliff. They were led into a private conference room where Sarah Greaves, a renowned investigative journalist, waited. Her reputation for exposing corruption was unmatched, and she was one of the few people who had dared to challenge the power structures that her father had so carefully built. But even Sarah's reputation couldn't protect her from the storm that was about to hit. If this went wrong, they could all be ruined. Are you sure about this? Sarah asked, her gaze sweeping over the group. She was a woman in her mid-30s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. Her face was a mask of professionalism, but even she seemed to sense the gravity of the situation. Sofia took a deep breath, the weight of the world on her shoulders. "We're sure," she said. "This is everything. The truth will be out. We just need you to run the story and expose him for who he really is." Sarah's eyes narrowed as she glanced at the documents laid out in front of them. She carefully flipped through the pages, her expression unreadable. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded. "This is explosive," she said quietly. "But if I run this, there's no turning back. Your father will come after me and you. All of you." Sofia felt her heart drop, but she couldn't pull away now. "We know the risks," she said. "But if we don't do this, everything we've fought for is lost. This is bigger than all of us. It's time for the world to know the truth." The journalist nodded, the decision made. "All right," she said. "I'll make sure this gets out." As they left the hotel, Sofia felt a surge of both hope and fear. They had done it. The truth was, it was only a matter of time before the world knew what her father had done, and everything he had built would come crashing down. But as the weight of the moment settled in, Sofia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She turned to Jaden, her heart pounding. "We did it," she said, her voice a mixture of relief and uncertainty. But before Jaden could respond, Sofia's phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced down, her blood running cold when she saw the message from an unknown number. "You think you've won? It's not over yet." The message was followed by a chilling picture, her father's face, twisted in rage, his hand resting on a gun. Sofia's stomach turned. The game had changed. Her father had never been one to back down easily. Do you think Sofia and Jaden's victory will be short-lived, or will they finally bring down her father's empire? What will happen now that Sofia's father is coming for them? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The chill of the night air seemed to swallow Sofia whole as she stared at the ominous message on her phone. Her father's wrath was no longer just a distant possibility, it was real, and it was coming for them. The image of his face, contorted with fury, lingered in her mind. His grip on the gun seemed a silent promise that he would do whatever it took to destroy them. Jaden stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "We can't back down now. We've come too far." Sofia's heart hammered in her chest. The weight of what they had done was heavy, but the danger of what was to come pressed even harder on her. Her mind raced, but beneath the fear, she felt a surge of something else. Something stronger. "You're right," she said, taking a deep breath. "We've exposed him. There's no turning back." Victor, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up, his voice hoarse with a mix of fear and determination. "Your father is ruthless, Sofia. But he's not invincible. He's made too many enemies, and now he has more than just you to worry about." Sofia looked at her uncle, the man who had once been an unwilling pawn in her father's game, but who now, after much hesitation, had chosen to fight. His face was pale, but there was a fire in his eyes. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "What's really going on?" Victor's gaze hardened. The people who are backing him, the ones he's been working with, are not all on his side anymore. There are cracks in his alliances, and those cracks are about to widen. I've given you the names of people who have been pulling his strings, but there are even more who want him gone. They're ready to move against him, Sofia. A glimmer of hope flickered in Sofia's chest, but it was quickly smothered by the looming threat of her father's retaliation. "So, what now?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "Can we really take him down? Or will he destroy everything we've worked for?" Jaden's hand found hers, steadying her. "We don't have a choice, Sofia. We're all in this together." Sofia looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. In the darkest of times, Jaden had always been her anchor. He had stood by her, even when it seemed like the world was falling apart. Now, as they prepared to face the consequences of their actions, she knew that they would fight side by side. It didn't take long for the storm to hit. Within hours of the exposé breaking, Sofia's father, Liam Stanton, went into full damage control mode. The media coverage was relentless, the financial ruin swift. The public outcry was deafening as people turned against the empire he had built. News outlets, investigators, and politicians who had once turned a blind eye were now eager to take him down. The first blow came with an arrest warrant, one that shocked even Sofia. Her father, the powerful CEO of Stanton Enterprises, was facing criminal charges. The weight of his actions had finally caught up with him. But as the truth unraveled, Sofia felt an unsettling emptiness. She had wanted this, she had wanted to expose him for what he was. But now that the truth was out, now that her father's empire was crumbling, there was no satisfaction in it. No relief. "He's a broken man," Sofia whispered to Jaden one night as they sat together, watching the news coverage. "But I still feel lost." Jaden took her hand, his gaze soft but filled with understanding. "It's okay to feel that way. You've lost so much, Sofia. Your father, your family, the life you thought you had. But you've gained something too. You've gained your freedom. You're not bound by his lies anymore." Sofia looked out the window, the weight of his words settling in her chest. She had fought so hard to escape the confines of her father's world, but she hadn't realized how deeply those chains had rooted themselves in her. She had grown up in the shadow of expectations, always playing a role she hadn't chosen. Now she was free. She was no longer the dutiful daughter of a CEO, trapped in a gilded cage. She was her own person. It wasn't just her father's empire that had fallen, it was her own emotional shackles. As the days passed and the storm around her father continued to grow, Sofia found herself grappling with an unexpected shift. Her father's downfall, though satisfying in many ways, had left her feeling hollow. She had wanted justice, but now she was starting to realize that revenge wasn't what she had truly sought. It was peace. It was closure. And it was love. She knew what she had to do. "Jaden," she said one morning, her voice steady but filled with a quiet intensity. "I think it's time to move on." Jaden looked at her, his eyes searching. "Move on? From what?" Sofia smiled softly. "From this. From everything. From the pain, from the past. We've won. We've taken down my father. But I want more than that. I want us to build a future. A real future." Jaden's face lit up with surprise, then understanding. "You mean you're ready?" Sofia nodded, her heart racing. "Yes. I'm ready to build something new, something real. No more lies, no more secrets. Just us." Jaden's smile was filled with warmth, a promise of hope. He took her hand, lifting it to his lips in a soft, tender kiss. "I've always known this was our fight, Sofia. And I've always known you would lead us to victory." But their journey wasn't over yet. There was still the matter of her father. Liam Stanton was not going down without a fight. As the legal battles continued, Sofia stood strong. She fought not with anger, but with clarity, refusing to let her father's twisted legacy control her any longer. Her father would face justice. He had no choice. But for Sofia, the real victory had already been won. She had taken control of her own destiny. Months passed, and the once mighty Stanton Empire was dismantled. The investigations continued, and Liam Stanton was convicted of multiple charges, his empire and fortune now reduced to dust. The power he had wielded so carelessly was gone. But Sofia had found something more valuable than all the riches and influence her father had once controlled. She had found herself. She and Jaden began to build their life together, one without the constraints of wealth, power, or expectations. They traveled, they laughed, they dreamed, and they loved each other with a freedom Sofia had never known. Sofia had walked through fire to get to this point. She had lost her father, her family, and the life she had once known. But in the process, she had discovered who she truly was. She wasn't just the daughter of Liam Stanton. She was Sofia, strong, independent, and ready to create her own future. As the sun set one evening, casting a golden glow across the horizon, Sofia and Jaden stood together, hand in hand, looking out at the world ahead of them. "It's all ours now," Jaden said softly, his voice filled with love. Sofia smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "Yes, it is." And as they stepped forward into their future, Sofia knew that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. What do you think of the ending? Was Sofia's journey one of redemption, or will she always be haunted by her father's legacy? What do you think comes next for her and Jaden? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.